Kiriki! Ya pulingina. Ya Ngari morning. Hello. I'm taking this moment in time for you to acknowledge my ancestors and my country, Miladina, this country on where you were seated. I acknowledge the Muanina and Mumarimana nations that thrived on this country for hundreds and thousands of years since the beginning of time, on both sides of Timtamilimananya, the Derwent River. I acknowledge my elders, those that have passed, those that are present, and those that are yet to emerge. I'd also, with deep heart, acknowledge my community members and my elders that are in this room with you this morning. We have thrived since the beginning of time in harmony with country. This moment is for you to acknowledge, but I'd also like and hope for every step that you take, you continue to respect and acknowledge the sacred lands right across Lutruwita. Naridina too.
Respectful. Well done, Sinsa. We're going, oh, is this the time? They'll applaud at the end of Sinsa's, but Sinsa's gives such beautiful acknowledgements, welcomes. It's so, I applaud you that you were so gobsmacked by her incredible presence. And if you ever get to see Sinsa's work as a performer, hands up those who have actually seen Sinsa on stage. Yes, isn't she an extraordinary, amazing person? And what an incredible resource, performer, energy to have here in this particular place as well. And I just want to acknowledge, where's Uncle Jim Everett? He's over here. Another incredible resource. Uncle Jim Everett, please give him a round of applause. Uncle Jim is a pioneer. He's an incredible force that has made so much happen. And we were talking, Sinsa and I were talking yesterday, Uncle Jim, about how, in fact, we are all here because of people like you and you yourself, who have done such an incredible amount to make the world that we see around us now possible. The stories that you told and continue to tell, the energy that you've had, the women you've slept with, all of these extraordinary things that you've been able to achieve has lifted us up in an incredible way, and provided more of the population as well as you've been going. No, don't clap that. That's too cheeky. Uncle Jim and I worked together in the early 90s. And I was just saying to Sinsa before, you actually look more rested now, Uncle Jim, too. And this ability, well, no, this is a man who just work himself for his community, make things different, really grow everyone, support everyone along the way. And it's great to see you so rested and youthful as well. And may you have many, many more years of your contribution to the way we think about how this country operates. Because you are an extraordinary elder, and thank you so much for everything you've done. I told him in the foyer I'd shame him out like that, and he was going, oh yeah, and what else are you going to say? I guess, thank you so much for coming today. My name's Wesley Enoch, and you will all know Stephen Page, the most incredible artist, cultural leader. And just want to pay our respects to those elders who are not here with us today and who have made an incredible contribution to the country that we're living in now. And also to those First Nations people who are in the audience today who, again, are working as artists, who are telling stories, who are continuing cultural traditions, making a difference. And this idea, especially in this part of our landscape, this particular island, under sometimes incredibly challenging circumstances over the last 230 odd years. Just to say your resilience is extraordinary, and our view should always be to say you are here, you are strong in yourself, you know who you are, and your art and culture is so important, and everything that visits this place does need to acknowledge this landscape and our history, and it's a history for all the country to learn from. Today we're talking about, watch out, I'm going to call you an elder, another elder, another person who's contributed so much to the landscape that we're living in now and what we're looking at doing. Stephen Page, people know his work. People know him, actually. You've always been incredibly honest and open about yourself as a person, as a human being, as well as an artist. And I know that we've often talked about your incredibly large family. How do you think that large family has influenced you as an artist, about who you are now? Do you think that that large family has somehow encouraged you to be the artist you are now?
Oh, yeah, look, sorry, Wesley, just before you start,
Please.
I just want to acknowledge Sensor for that beautiful welcome and,
Yeah,
and just mob and clan that from this fragile landscape, but yet so resilient. And I've had connection to elders through here, and I was texting Auntie Lola yesterday, Greeno, and who helped me with Mathena in 2008, and but there was always a wonderful sense of, you know, big know-it-all urban fella from a mainland comes to the island, and there's suspicion, and you look at, but the thing for me was that I was always welcomed in here, and that was, you know, just the generosity, and yeah, I have huge respect, and you know, Uncle Jim, I have a huge respect for you, and you know, you inspired me as a young artist, and the good old Black Theatre days in Redfern, and you know, just I just think of that clan of, you know, Bob Mazza and Kevin Gilbert, and even through the work Mum Shell did there. But I know that was a real turning point politically for me, because I was a young man seeing these elders, you know, battle on the ground and lay down those resilient seeds. So thank you for having me and the company back. Oh, my family, they're, you know, like all black families, we're just all wonderfully dysfunctional, you know, like just in the best way. And yeah, it's funny, I was only when they announced, that I was stepping down from Bangarra, I was going on like I was retiring or I was dying, and and you know, my contract's not done until next year. So, but anyway, that's how things work, and it takes, you know, people want to get that information out earlier. But I've been reflecting a lot, and obviously, you know, I left home at 16, and you know, my dad's a freshwater man from Yugambeh Nation, Mununjali clan. There's 5 rivers there, and Mununjali is one of the smallest, you know, and he's the youngest of 8, and he was brought up by Strong, my grandmother, an amazing woman who, you know, hiding her kids constantly, older daughters going off doing domestic labour, not seeing them for years later, you know, men leaving country because that was best for them to do, and, you know, she just raised him as a strong woman, and then he, you know, met my mother, who's a Nunukul woman from Stradbroke Island, saltwater. That's how Wesley and I are related. Where Wesley claims he's related to me. No, I'm only joking. But my grandmother and your grandmother are first cousins.
Grandfather, yeah.
First cousins, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep thinking about the women because all the strong women. And it was funny because Mum and Dad, because they come from that assimilated displacement, and you know, she couldn't identify. She had an Irish-English father who, my grandmother, Granny Martha, they used to say they were Indian, you know, because it was better for them to survive on the streets. And my dad just had a completely different, you know, upbringing on homeland, and you know, holding on to sacred language and secretly speaking it as an 8-year-old with his mother, and you know, that constant fear of getting caught speaking it, and that dripping of the forbiddenness to be taken away from them. And so these extremes of the way they were brought up, one totally out of fear, disowning the identity, and the other one just wanting to keep getting back to country, care for country, the significance of country. So all that was sort of fed. So I had this juxtaposition of a foot in each world, really, of culturally, and just the consciousness of that was always, I can feel it when I was young. I mean, I got obviously the Irish, English grandfather side skin, and they all said I belonged to the milkman down the road when I was little, and yeah, my brothers and sisters were terrible to me. They, but Dad would say I was always probably the most conscious politically and curious, and I'd say, where's our language? And he said, oh, Doreen, this kid, he's always talking, you know, shut him up, you know. And I think a lot of that, just the observation and seeing them have, you know, my dad was a timber cutter, you know, worked on the railway, and he was everything, and, you know, did all that slavery through that landscape, through Yugambeh, for all those pastor's fellas, and anyway, I won't go into the politics of that, but anyway, the family, that was quite innate in the family. And then, you know, we had to move to Brisbane. My older, the fourth child, Philip, he died at 25, but he had epilepsy, and he needed medical help. So Mum had to move in from the bush with Dad. I think it was about 7 kids when David was born. And anyway, so we moved, and so I was the other end of the 12 kids. And we were brought up in Brisbane in the sort of what they call the Bronx of Brisbane, where they put all big families, house commission, mainly a lot of black fellas. We all lived in that community. Anyway, so we sort of grew up more in an urban situation, and Dad would just take us back to country every now and again, and he was good like that, Dad. He had an old Bedford, and he used to throw us all on the back of those days. You could just hang out the back of the truck, and we'd go and catfish. Good Mum loved mullet. He used to catch mullet all the time when the season was right. That's where all the wattles used to come in season, and then the mullet, and they used to get all the pollen from the wattle. And I remember Granny used to roll out and then just put it above the water and just watch, and then they used to use the old singlets for fishing nets. But anyway, I used to remember all those beautiful, just that simple but strong connection to land, and it's the cultural practices. Anyway, go back home, go urban, back and forth. And by 16, I'm on a bloody TAA flight to Sydney, you know, auditioning for a dance college. And
well, this dance college, I mean, when I think about it, we often talk about your brothers, you know, and how you work together and all those kind of things. But your sisters were a bit of an influence as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So pop culture was big. So Elvis Presley, Beatles, Supremes, Motown, mixed with country and western. Dad would chuck in Conway Twitty and Charlie Pride in there, and then we'd go back, and Mum was a big fan of musicals. We never had much, but Dad he'd love going to the dump, and that was we'd go to the tip, and we'd make sure we'd go late Sunday afternoon before sunset. And he was an amazing craftsman, and we found this old TV, and came home, we had the pliers to change the thing because it had no channel, and David used to sit on the roof with a hanger. He was like the human antenna on the roof, and he never got to watch much things because he was on the roof. He'd say, "Can you see anything?" We go, "Yeah, no, stop, no, yeah, stop." And anyway, I'm getting to that because, and then just musicals, you know, and so there was this sort of wonderful mix of just this sort of urban pop culture with hearing stories on country. And Mum and Dad they should have ran their own bloody nightclub, those two, in the old days, because they used to host Mob. Because Mob would use our house because they all come from the bush, and so we were sort of like the urban city sort of house that people used to come to. So there was always good parties and always music and stuff. So yeah, and then the sisters choreographed and direct, and we would be mimicking the Supremes and the Jacksons and Elvis Presley and dressing up. And I think I did drag at about 3 or 4, and yeah, just always around stories and songs. So the sisters, that's all that just homegrown sort of awareness of performing.
Just to give some sense of where everything is. So Mount Gravatt, where that house was, is about, half an hour away from the centre of Brisbane?
Yep.
And
And then another hour, or well, used to be back then an hour, but now all those highways and freeways to get to country now take 30 minutes.
so
or
west
something.
into like Bow Desert.
All in through Mudgee, all that Mount Warning, that Tambourine Mountain, that fresh water going into that small cape going out the salt water. It's interesting because how they knew, Mum and Dad knew they were promised many years later, 30 years after being married, in terms of right skin for language. And it was from that fresh water, because all that water comes through, and that's where the salt water coming across from Stradbroke. So they sort of went back and reconnected all that sort of mapping of land significant. And Dad was good like that. He wouldn't do it sort of in an academic way. He would just sort of tell the story. But anyway, I'm just jumping all over the place.
No, you're right. You're such a consummate storyteller. You know, we go with you every time, wherever you go to, because there's a logic to everything you do. And I keep seeing too that I see in you what you talk about how your father told stories too. You never tell it directly. You tell it in a way that kind of brings people on the journey with you as well. I mean, these stories that your father would say to you, or talk to you, or secretly say to the side. Do you see Uncle Roy in you now? Do you see him in how you operate?
Yeah, we were really close. We were always close. He was good with us boys. And he had it hard. He didn't want to move to the city because, he just kept hiding all his life. His mother would hide him all the time, not being taken away. And he had good principles, good work ethic, and I'm so glad I got that from him. Like he just worked, and he didn't want to come to the city because he couldn't get work. We'd only see him every now and again, and then he'd come, and then he slowly moved in. And then he just loved landscaping and concreting of all jobs, which is so, to him, he was always about land. And the thing with Dad, like through the early 70s, he'd worked in concreting, landscaping, and he was probably better than any white fellow working there. He'd work for all them fellas, and he'd keep quiet. And then he seen them one day, they were coming back and obviously making more money, and they were buying homes and getting loans. And he asked one of them, where did you? He was going to bank, Commonwealth Bank now, or whatever bank it was. And I remember him coming, he got a suit, he had a plastic bag, and he got a suit from St. Vincent de Paul, come home, and Mum was going gully at him because he didn't iron it. And he went up the bank, and he came back, and he was in the room, and I could hear him crying to Mum. And he got refused a loan, and he just felt like he failed, like he was working for everybody, better working man than any of those fellas. And my dad was really, and I used to see that a lot. And later on in life, we just got talking, and he saw the works I did after dancing for 3 years, and then David and Russell joining me, and he used to always laugh at me being curious politically, and I got kicked out of school for a week, and Mum said, if you don't get a job, you're going back to school, because I was one of the first to get through year 11 and 12, and then my cousin said, come down and work with me. I'm down at the Aboriginal Legal Service down at Roma Street, and that movement at the late 70s into the 80s, and only Ujuru Nunukul and Vivian was working as a civil law clerk, and I was around all these field officers and Cecilia Smith, and so I was just bang into this world of just politics, and Gammon being this trainee law clerk, they would solicitors would give me stuff, and I was just helping out and just hearing that side of politics really on the ground, and that's where I saw the poster for the college. Anyway, and I went out and told Dad, and I said, I'm going to go off and go down to Sydney. So all of those things, connecting, all that backyard stuff was all that pre-training, and then when we started telling stories, our ceremonies in this contemporary way on stage, he loved it. He did think I was rich the first time he came to QPAC, and he saw 800 people in the audience, and he thought all those people were paying me the ticket price, and
right.
And after the show, he enjoyed it. He said, but come here. He said, how many? There's a lot of people there. How much they pay? And I said, no, hey, I know what you're thinking. I'm not. I said, no, that's not my money. I said, I should have been smarter and taken percentage. I said, but no. I said, no, that's just, yeah. No, but he loved the story. Look, he loved all the reconnecting to traditional stories and language and working with mob up north. And he loved the way that all the different clans that built relationships all over the country, from Torres Strait to north to south. The south wasn't, the urban sort of connection stuff was a little bit later, but all that sort of more traditional living culture, sharing of cultures, I don't think we talk about that a lot, about the living, the ones that were fortunate, they, you know, I know all the clans down here, they took the biggest brunt of massacre, you know, like the biggest brunt. And we forget about that. And I used to go, even up in the northern and Arnhem Land and even Gallaroy and them, they used to call us yellow fellas, urban fellas from the south. I used to stand up to him too, look at him. And interesting though, you know, I said, hey, yeah, but you didn't take the brunt like us, the fellas down the south, and even further, you know. And so there's, point I'm getting at was just really sharing this sort of sacred personal relationship between assimilated passion and drive, and then when you go on to living language where they didn't get that disruption as much, and they can still hang on to living language. And I was quite open with those mob talking about that. Yeah, you can call me yellow skin, but my blood black, yeah, I've got them ancestors there driving me, you know. And it's funny when you work out politically like that, black on black issues and black on black conversations, they've been my biggest learnings. They're the most productive for me. So when Dad does watch a show and he sees us responding to the Western system and performing this ceremony this way, he really got it. And yeah, and, you know, the fact that he breathed language, spoke language, you know, and David and I were just there at his last breath when he died in 2010, and he was just singing, where am I? He was just singing this little song, and I looked over at David. David was crying. I was thinking, fuck, imagine having a life of that and then feeling safe to sing your language in that death cycle, you know, like. Yeah. And it was better, we washed him down, and the funny thing though, because he was so much in pain, but instead of morphine, he said, Stephen, tell that nurse I want more teen. And David and I giggled and we said, Dad, it's not morphine, not morphine. and then he was like, he had a little laugh. But just watching, yeah, and that really inspired me. Like that, I shouldn't even say like inspired, because that's just, yeah, if I am, God, I fucking went round the bush to tell the story. But anyway, I am like him, and I feel him, and he was with me on this work, and he was the one telling me to do this work, and him and David.
Well, this work is because I know that different collaborators, different work, a lot of, as you were mentioning, you know, Yungamata and different Yungu influences in some of the work with the collaborators that you've brought in. This is one of the first times that you've gone to a Yugambeh beginning point, and Yugambeh being the language of your father's people. What influenced that decision? What made that the most important thing to do now?
Well, it's funny because I was working with, well, when you were the festival director, Sydney Festival,
yeah.
And we were working, and Wesley was, did you 5 years, or did you do 6?
5.
5, yeah. And he always wanted Bangarra to be in the program. It always falls in that January time, and Bangarra, you know, we're all 16, fortunate to have 16 full-time First Nations mob from all over the country, and they, you know, you do one new work a year. Usually they give us the winter season at the Opera House and say, hey, you can have this. And we've been there for 20 years. That's sort of like our home. And so to do a show in a new work in January, because they get their annual leave by December, it was always hard to create and have the time. So anyway, we made the time and we liked the idea, and then obviously we got hit by this pandemic and we couldn't do the work. But I was working with Uncle Jimmy and Dave's out there, and I think only Vicky must have went back like today, did she? Or she come down last night?
Is only Vicky there?
Oh, she's there, yeah.
Only Vicky West.
And Lola, and look, because I did work down here with Mathena back in 2008, and Yeah, and just got talking about...
What was Mathena? That was the work.
The young... The Franklins, well, they all know, the mob know their story here with Mathena and the history here with her. And it's funny being in this theatre too, because I think they brought her as a small girl here too. But we sort of did that back and did a bit of work with Nunukul and Lola way back in 2008. Anyway, we were going to work on inspiration of doing through this form, telling from Truganini's story.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'd all created a little, Uncle Jimmy, I spoke to Uncle Jim, I think he was the first one I spoke to, him and Lola, Auntie Lola. And yeah, I don't know why, because you were doing the festival and we were talking about forms of dance and then dance with song and then set and costume and this sort of contemporary ceremony, which I suppose the Greeks call opera. But, you know, and I felt her story, this resilient clan of present mob today, Palawa mob down, just the mob here today, it was just inspiring for me. And I felt that and the land, the form of opera was a respected form to tell that story. And I always felt like operas and you know, are like ceremony, like the scale and the depth and the potency of ceremony with song and dance and paint, all those things. We've been doing it for 65,000 years. We've been doing ring cycles and operas way back. And there was just the idea when you invited me was just, I kept thinking of Truganini, I kept thinking of not so much as just the person, but also the one that carried the connection to land as a metaphor of, it was more about the spirit and strength that lies in this landscape. You can feel it, I can feel it every time I come, and I was always inspired. So as we went down the track, I was listening and sharing, and one of the things I always try to just become a 3-year-old boy again when I don't know something, or I don't. There's so many clan stories, so many different connections, you know. You look at it from the 300 to 500 different languages, so therefore there's different dance styles, there's different representations of women and men, and connection to land and sky and ocean, like the mythology. Just, I'm always fascinated, and it's always a good little reference point for me to gear off when I'm inspired. Anyway, we got talking about a lot of things, and politics and the present day versus the past, and I suppose that's the play on words for not the past, is that, you know, we always refer to the past, that, and yet the present day is the resilient human of today that is carrying and challenged, and, you know, they're determined from the past. And so we talked about a lot of things, and then just getting down the track, I just kept thinking, wow, like this passion and this resilience and this process. And I don't know, just my dad just kept popping up. And I think I was talking to Uncle Jimmy, and I was talking to Auntie Lola a bit about, God, this is inspiring me to sort of, you know, push back to mine. And then I thought, why does a mainland blackfella like this come and tell that story here? And I felt like, you know, I know I was asking permission to lead that story, but at the same time I thought, no, that it's going to be more potent, and maybe it needs to stay in the sacred cave, because it'll be through their lens that they tell that story, you know. And so I just thought, and I know my David used to always get shitty with me, because he'd say, oh, you like telling everybody else's story, when are we going to tell our story? You know, so he was stirring me up in this work, because he would love this work, because he just the form of language as a form, and he loved musicals too. I'm not a big fan of them. Like, as soon as someone starts singing the English words of you telling you how you connect, I just sort of go. But at the same time, you know, I like. But at the same time, I appreciate the form, and it took me a while to sort of work out. Oh, Paigey, that's a bit corny. But then, I don't know. As soon as you embody it and you tell stories and you let these artists in this clan, like Kirk Page, so my dad's brother is Kirk's grandfather. And so we all had a connection in the cast. Anyway,
But family's always been part of it. No, but this idea that this work is very much a coming home for you.
Yeah.
And the idea of Yugambeh language, and you worked with your sister as a language consultant.
Donna did a bit of work. She did some work up at Bachelor College and some linguistic work in terms of language and caring for language. She did a bit of work down in Chasm as well, because David went to the Conservatorium in Adelaide and did music before he'd come to Bangarra. And so Donna, I kept thinking, I went back to mob on the Yugambeh Museum up home, and and there's always divided politics, and that's okay. Like, we all accept that, and I'm glad we do. Like, we should all have different opinions on what things are. And then I thought, Donna's here. Like, I rang her and then talked to a few elders there, and they thought Donna was great. But anyway, she helped me form some of that language, and then letting it just be a voice and a form within this sort of contemporary sort of frame. But the point I was just getting at before was with Uncle Jim and Dave and Vicky, and all that inspiration from it. And even the last turning point for me was talking to Nathan Maynard, because we were talking, and Nathan was like, I don't know, because you're writing with a white woman and you're writing. Then I said, well, she's really servicing me. I'm sort of telling the story. I said, I can't do everything, Nathan. I can't do everything. If I wrote, I said, oh, Lord, that'd be it. But I said, it's always been that sort of process for me. I've always worked, white fella, black fella, whatever fella. But, from the black lens, and the leadership of the black lens is always led by us, And it was interesting talking to Nathan, because, he's been doing a lot of his own writing, and he's doing that connection, and that inspired me. And that's when I just went, you know what, that's going to happen, and there's a calling here. So, it's just the process of everything I do, though, is I like to be really vulnerable and honest with it. Like, even Yungle mob going home, and they look at me and they might call me the yellow fella, and yet, to uproot 600 of them, and they all get to come together, north, south, east, west, Numbawa, and up in Galawinku. And when I uprooted 600 mob to come and do the Sydney Olympics, I brought them all together, and they all sat around and they disagreed and whatever it was, and I said, but wait a minute, you only get 1 minute and 40. And they went, what? We do ceremonies from sunset to dawn. And I said, oh, no, not this one. It might be 3 billion people, but they're only giving you 1 minute 40. I said, you're lucky. They gave the Pitjantjatjara 400 women, Central Desert women. I said, they gave them 1 minute and 20. So, because, when we did the Olympics, obviously. But I think the point I'm making is just being, I don't know what that connection, you talk about the generosity or the spirit, but this reciprocation between assimilated mob and traditional mob, and just sharing knowledge. I think that's been the really big
When you say
strength.
assimilated mob, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, displaced, carrying, and you carry trauma from displacement of land, forbidden, taken away, and when you're assimilated from, you're taken from. A lot of mob up that north end didn't get us the
I'm going to ask you, just move your jumper a bit, because your microphone's getting a bit...
sorry about that.
No, you're right.
I'll take my fancy jumper off. I'm just talking more about removing mob.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And all I'm saying is just having that sense of relationships and building, and therefore they entrust me to be the sort of city eyes to care for their story, and to because we have that platform in the mainstream, so therefore that means we will have our voice. I remember Uncle Charlie and Perkins and Isabella Coe, and I remember going to Redfern Town Hall, and I had butcher's paper, because they were like, no, boy, you can't go in there, we're going to boycott. And I said, oh, fucking hell, see what happens? You're going to distill a boycott? I said, we're a diverse race. Why can't we have a presence inside there? I'll choreograph your boycott. Let's get 300 people. And Isabella Coe said, oh, you're smart ass. And I said, no. I said, you can't let that girl run that race without the support. And no one knew she was going to like the call to that stage. But anyway, here I am. mob stories, sharing, back home, go home.
But also politics everywhere.
Oh.
Politics everywhere.
It's in us, it's in the
Yeah.
land. It's been for 234 years, more not at our choice though.
Yeah.
But there's politics in culture, there's politics in cultural practice. We all black fellas don't have to get on or agree. And that's okay. That's part of our custom and our practice.
But I think, often because we're seen as a minority in our own country, Parliament's allowed to disagree. Albanese and Scott Morrison are allowed to disagree, but two black fellas in a room have to agree to everything. That's not true. That's never been true.
No.
And I think that lots of things have happened. So when we think about the beginning of your career, when we think about Bangarra through the 80s into the 90s, and now here we are. I mean, politics has changed a lot in that period of time.
But the other thing too is I don't like the word disagree and agree because it's not, those English words just really don't, that doesn't fulfill the way generations of our mob talk. There's a reason for talking, there's a reason for having a conversation, so that Western system creates that dimensional way of how we communicate. And you look, all them years, Uncle Jimmy will know the constant cycle of whether it's a bark petition or Uluru Statement of the Heart, this constant trying to fit your fucking 65,000 years of knowledge and constitution into this insipid Western system that makes no fucking sense. And 234 years today, we're still trying to squeeze it in, like me trying to squeeze this show into this theatre. But you know what I mean? Like we squeeze it in.
Yeah.
And so therefore it has a voice and it connects. We can be the academic, we can be the lawyer. I've seen so much shift, and then we get all exhausted because we go, oh yeah, we can survive in the West system, we can just talk like you, we can be like that. And then you realise, oh fuck, my spirit's been gutted, and then I've got to go back to country.
And be accountable to a whole group of people.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I've watched mob go, I've watched people, depression, I've watched families collapse, and that's all just been from my connection. So therefore the healing and the medicine of that, I go, hey, let's cleanse. Got a story? I've got a platform.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go.
You've joked too that that the echidna is almost your other totem.
Oh, I love it.
Because it walks around with all the spears in its
back.
I
get speared in the back lots of times. And that's good though, because that means I must be doing something right. You know what I mean? If I wasn't, no one talk about you.
What does it mean when you are critiqued? I remember there's some reviews of work that when it went overseas and people would call it folkloric or they do all this kind of stuff. What does that mean for you when people have an opinion about you?
I don't, Wesley. Honestly, from a young age, my dad taught me that, that's not, that opinion or that observation, I walk a different road. I could not produce 34 works in the amount of time I've been at Bangarra, focus and concentrate and just really fulfill the flesh of your own black lens. If I worried about Doris and Gregory over there telling me how to tell my story, you wouldn't be able to do all of that. Oh, look, the Brits went, in London, we get savaged all the time, but that's guilt. They didn't want us to evolve.
Yeah. And often people talk about
that. We go back to claim back the ashes,
Yeah.
Proper ashes, And I thought, I don't get involved. And I find all that fucking superficial. Like that's another form of poison, psychologically. We fall down, we know what's wrong, we know what's right. Elders go, here's some language, oh, this is for public domain, that doesn't have a strong significance, so you could probably... Mate, the best creative observation I had and critics that I've had have been from the relationship with my own First Nations mob, the diversity of that mob, and sharing.
Well, and in this work, in Wujang, the idea too that you don't go through an act of translation for the audience. they have to understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not translating the language necessarily.
Well, I remember Rachel Massa saying to me once, hey, you should have subtitles up there, whatever they call subtitle, whatever title. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. That artist is telling that story in language. It's a form. The problem we have in Western society in the system, immediacy, understanding, rather than just accepting. So if you hear something and it shifts your consciousness and spirit, straight away they want to go, I want to understand what that's about. What did it, not just like, no, just feel it and connect. It's a process. We're all a wonderful illusion, a spirit of a creation, land, wherever it is. And this thing of just constantly just like soft robots, it's, to me, that system eats at me constantly, and that's why I do what I do. And no, I'm not going to do something. I'm going to let you have the language and let you go to listen. Yeah, I can print it down later on for you, and but you can feel it. That's why I loved working in dance. Like the dancers, we'll get stories, and then we always have a story. We pass a story, they swallow it, they embody it, we debate it. Younger generation don't understand that. We teach, we learn. Big brother, big sister, little sister. We share, they embody. Yes, it's Western form of modern or classical or whatever, but I tell you, that internal blood, that's full of everything. Reconnection, ownership, reclaiming, knowledge, everything in the process. And so sometimes I tend to think that's more potent, and it plays with your senses differently, because we're just all formed from the one way of observing something.
And this idea of ownership. I need to understand what it is so I can own it and hold it and carry it away with me. And I think a lot of your work is an invitation to come in rather than take away.
Yeah, and look, if you get something from it, that's fine. And they all don't work half the time. Some work better than others, some are different. But it's not even like putting in... I don't want to disrespect the work, because you don't want to put it in that sense of, I don't know, this, once again, it's the tension of, it being a competitive form. So therefore I've always just believed when we're honest in the process in the rehearsal room and we're sharing that, and we're so in the moment, in the core of that spirit, product doesn't bother me. Like I just like, the process on this was so beautiful. Like Elaine Crombie and, Kirk and fellas that enter in the backyard because they come from a different way of navigating, connecting back to culture. And I say, well, you need to be 3-year-old. You don't know it all. Just be a 3-year-old. What do you mean? You don't. And so the ones that were more experienced, and Kirk's hitting 50, Elaine's hitting, like I said, you're at a time in your life now where you have to lean on what you share with the younger girls of Bangarra. So we just created this beautiful, we had Alada Valentine, she's a non-Indigenous woman, she's servicing words. We take it, and I said, don't worry about Alada, she's not the boss. You want to get rid of that whole section? You don't like those words? No, get rid of it. Like Elaine. Steve composed the music. I don't have my brother anymore, but he tried to do the best to service all this, and what does that mean? And it's a bit too bluesy and that, or is the message of that socially, what's coming from a gut, is that it's just finding the right measures on how something can so that there's an honesty in your voice, and I think that's all I'm talking about. I think from the critics to where you're performing, to all our works, what I love about them is just there's a truth, and we're in a century now of truth, and it's everywhere, and you've got this universe of social digital world, and everything's immediate. We're in immediacy now, and our generations that are coming next, that's their poisons, that's their challenges, and so we've got to quickly try to root them down, and that's why this cycle of generation and passing on knowledge is that the caring of that and the continuing of that, that's the culture machine you've got to keep flowing.
And you talked then about the ideas of truth, that we're in the century of truth, and also the century of mental health and mental.
It's all exposed now. You know, every layer, every thin layer of mental health issues, human health issues. I think of my mother, and I think of my grandmother, and I think, oh my Lord, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have nothing, and they carry, and you carry. And that's that thing about owning trauma. What I've learnt is owning, just respecting the truth and the ownership of trauma.
I was talking to an audience member who saw it, I think yesterday, and she was saying how she was in tears. Like she was, I'm not going to say she was traumatized, but she was in tears at expressing and taking in this story. And she was saying, well, what does that mean for the performers that have to go through it every night, or 8 times a week perhaps? I mean, what does it mean for a First Nations performer to go through this trauma and express it to an audience all the time?
Yeah, well, we've always had the sense of the well-being of our spirit, and like I said about the process of creating the work. There's also the coming, what we call going to sleep with the work, and when we stop, and I make sure, I was talking to Elaine and all them, we all knew that, and in the rehearsals I said, all you women, I want you to know how to look after each other, and when you come off the show, they just worked out a natural little flow, how to sit together, and that's their time. You can call it what you want, and same with the men. I just said, you all look out for each other, and so when you come off, because you choose this is what you choose, this is your choice as a storyteller. And you want to play in that world for 7 years? Well, here are the cultural protocols that we reclaim. And then, so therefore, that's our testament of how we're going to stay strong as one, Yeah.
And I know some people don't make it as well. And,
and that's
talked
okay.
about, that people need to step away from it, step out of it. Some people, and that terrible thing too, where people stay in that trauma, or people pass away. And I know that your family has had a lot of experience with that. How does that affect you? What do you do to leave all of that trauma away? What's your form of leadership that you give to yourself to step away from those things so you can keep going forward?
I just am thankful that I am aware that I do not have the same fate challenges that generations before me had. My father, my grandmother, mate, they were resilient. I feel like I'm getting off a little bit, because the resources are different, the evolution's different, the accessibility, immediacy. You can get food, Uber Eats. You know what I mean? Like it's immediate. I watch my granny just. Anyway, all I'm saying is that's why not the past. That play on the words are not the past, and then the present day and the spirit of the past, and the respect and the strength and the knowledge of that is really a metaphor for the white perspective.
Yes.
And I remember we were in Sydney and we did the last show, and someone said, you've got this non-Indigenous guy representing the white energy. Well, I really, we did think about, should the white energy, is it too weak for it to just be in the music and not a physical figure on stage? Or why did you do the colonial, he's mad? And I said, because, it's the fucking frustration you have with the Commonwealth. This whole thing about white law and black law, and this, if I hear another R word, recognize, reconciliation, this, that, I said, I'm going to go crazy. Like this thing of... Anyway, and I said, well, wait a minute. I said, well, he's a token white fella. And I said, if we've got to carry trauma, white fella got to carry guilt. You got to meet us in the middle. You go to Berlin, they dealt with their guilt. You go to their city, they got a whole fucking ceremony in the middle, big sacred gravesite in the middle of their guilt.
Do you think is this what this country needs? Does this country need?
I think it's on its way. slow steps, always slow steps,
Yeah.
long big ones, and then you get pulled back again, promises, pulled back again. We're not going to change until we're a republic. We're not going to change until we...
What's your feeling about...
Anyway, that's... You know what, I shouldn't say that because that's just me personally, and I don't really care, but it's oil and water. It's never going to be one substance. You can't... 234 years.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, like... Lord.
We need the breeding program.
But it's beautiful now. But but you know what? I'm just loving the road that blackfellas build. The road, the positive road, the road that we navigated, the opposite road, you know? You look here, look at Sensory, look at all name placing now, like the last 3 decades, a lot of urban environments are reclaiming, and it's slow and it's a battle, but...
And we see language
it's
everywhere.
changing.
Language is everywhere.
Yeah.
And, you know...
But that's blackfellas' work.
Yes.
Even if you're given a little grant of 5,000, yeah, my dad just said, no matter, we can do with that, we're going, and you build, you know, a bigger response to that.
Yeah.
You know, Bangarra shows for 10 years, Australian Council going, here's blackfellas, give a little bit. Yeah, but the only one that fucking tells stories from our heritage, we truly say we're Australian, and you're the last on the list, the money come down this way, and who said, oh, Bangarra. And then you got Department of Foreign Affairs say, hey, can you represent us overseas? And I said, well, put us up the fucking top of the opera of the ballet. Like, you know, like, this, they talk about equality and mental health and the human equality. You know, this race and identity, that's got to be the interesting one. I think that's where we're moving to. You know, all this groundwork and all this sacred, what I call contemporary sacred work, and oh, I look at my mob back home, and they're going, all the old fellas going back home that they were taken away from, and they're becoming 3-year-old child, and they're learning language again, and, you know, and cousins and stuff that finally got a health service in that town, little town, and just resources.
Well, let's say, from your position, you know, you've seen the last 30, 40 years. What do you think the next 30, 40 years is going to be for not just Bangarra, but just the challenges of what's coming ahead?
Pretty much of the same.
Yeah?
I think it's just going to be this momentum, as I say. I used to always say to... My dad used to always say to me, because he hated me leading sometimes, because he said, oh, you fucking talk too much, he used to always say to me, you got to hunt quietly. Now, if you hunt and you can't make a noise, that fucking prey will go away. And it's interesting, because I think we've found this beautiful way to hunt quietly. Because that other side, that government, that mess, that dysfunctional poison, whatever it is, that silly setup that we have in that made-up city on beautiful country and knowledgeable land. Can you imagine, 234 years ago, can you imagine if they just went, the knowledge, like we'd probably have one First Nations domestic language that we would have probably been able to share with everybody. You know, I remember saying that to Aidan Ridgway in 2007, I said, you know, Aidan, we know what we should do. We should get all our leaders, we should go and hide in a cave somewhere and get all the best language fellas from North, South, East, West, and we just create this one domestic language. And you reckon that's going to take you another 100 years. Anyway, look, I'm an optimistic man, and I got that from my dad and my mum. You know, they just, all our mob, we got that real optimism, that real intuitive thing just to keep marching forward, you know, and that'll always happen.
What's the thing you haven't achieved that you most wanted to achieve in the last 20 years? What's the thing you go, oh, I wanted to do that and somehow I wasn't able to do it? Was there anything that you were able to do everything you wanted?
Well, yeah, look, I don't take any of it for granted. And would I do it again? Yeah. Like you know, I just think, for me it's been relationships. You know, just relationships with just my own mob. As challenging as it's been, understanding as it's been, or just accepting, and just that's been the best thing for me. That's just all the teachers that I've had have just been through these cultural relationships, and I don't know. I wish I could sing on stage, but I want to do that one day too.
Do you want to do it?
Oh,
all
yeah.
right.
I can sing, brother. Don't worry.
Oh, I want to hear it. No, but I won't put you on the spot.
Only Charlie Pride, though.
Well, when you think about like you've done one-man shows with your brother, you've done film, you've done large-scale spectacles in terms of opening ceremonies at the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games. You've done all of this kind of work. Do you see some kind of continuity, some kind of through line for you?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, I think all that early stuff, and, you know, like I said, David would love this work. You know, probably wouldn't like a few things I've done, but that's okay. And, look, I always feel like I said, they're processes for me, and so therefore I put that in the gut of a serpent, you know, I always feel, or a song line, you know, I think every work, all those 34 works, they're all connected to one creative kinship song line, and each one will help the strength of the next one, or they're always inspired by each other, you know? And so therefore I always look at like First Nations traditional kinship systems or creative kinship systems, because art is a huge part of our life. Like it's medicine. It's part of our cultural protocols. You know, like and I always make sure we've got that dilly bag of cultural protocols that we all just check in, and I think that that's been the spine to the inspiration of all the works. And yes, that's just storytelling. You know, like dance has allowed me to then using dance as a ceremony form. In a way, I'm glad. I remember Uncle Bob and
Uncle Bob Mazza.
Yeah, Uncle Bob, and then we're talking about this way back, and probably the first black playwrights. Uncle Jim might have been. There was one in Canberra, and then there was one in Sydney. I think I was the second one. And then I remember Uncle Bob, and we were sitting in the corner, and he was just talking about that the creative storytelling kinship is just embedded in our systems.
Yes.
And so therefore I just feel like I'm constantly, just respecting and acknowledging.
Well, you build families. I mean, when you think about Alana Valentine, who's been the dramaturg, kind of the pen person of some of the work as well, you've worked with her for the last 10 years?
Yeah, about 10 years now, yeah.
You've worked with Steve Francis, who also worked with
David.
He
worked with David a lot, and then he was willing to, because he was closest to work with David. You've got to remember too, I apologise, I mean, I'm not saying every white person is a bad person, and it's not so much about that, but we, Bangarra, we have this cohesive, where the black voice is the leader, and the consciousness of that is also a sharing.
Yeah.
And we've always had that, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't, and that's okay. It's just finding those companion energies where it's all about the spirit and the passion and that vision of continuing that.
Well, when I say the word reconciliation, though, you'll turn your nose
No.
up at that one.
No.
But why?
You could say restoration. No.
Restoration, yeah. So that the non-Indigenous people are in fact a tool. I think you even said, Alana was writing down your words.
Oh, yeah, look, and Alana, she was good. She did. She was, yeah. I said, I'm your boss now, and you've got to write everything I want to say. And that's okay. We giggle about it. I try not to get that. That just distracts the process.
Yes.
Yeah? And yes, my brother's a writer. I've had him all my life writing. But it's been, for me though, it's always been, it's never been a predominant white vision or a white lead. It's like City Theatre Company helping us do for the festival for this show, I said, just give me your money. You have a big resource there, production, give me that, and you need to take responsibility for this story.
Yes.
No, I don't want to hear your creative ideas. We've got that. We've got our,
Is that a hard thing when you're
arguing? No, it's not a
or?
hard thing. And they go, okay. I said, straight up, it's okay. You don't have to own this.
Yeah.
We're culturally leading. We will own, but we want your service, and we want that, and we want that, and we want that. Reciprocate. Give a little, take a little, yeah. But we're leading it.
I'm hearing that advice to every First Nations person in the room, really, going, how do you actually get those resources to do what you want to do on your terms?
Yeah, and you just life's going too fast. You can't emotionally get involved. You can. there's honesty. That's all. It's just honesty and truth when you're working. And look, it's not always worked, and it's not always been with me. But as I get older, you understand, you listen. You know, I love to talk, and it's hard. I got to sit back and I got to try it. It's one thing I worked on the last 10 years, just really getting a focus on my listening. You know.
So let's project into the future now. I mean, as you joked before, like everyone goes, "Oh, Stephen's leaving. Is he dying? Is he dead? What's going on?" This idea of, and you're still another year and a bit away from even leaving, but everyone is thinking about what's next. What's next for Stephen Page?
Well, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to Portugal. I'm going to get a blood transfusion, and
become Portuguese.
Become Portuguese.
For
my next 50 years, and I have no memory of my last 50 years. So I'll go and establish another. No, I'm only joking. My father would punch me in the gut. I don't know, Wesley. Like
Time out by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted. Like I've just realised putting this work together and making. Frances Rings is the associate director, wonderful Guggenheim woman, and she grow, dance, choreograph, everything. It's just great now. I can just. I feel good though. Like just go. Because all I was worried about was just, you know, when I was to go home or anywhere, and they say to me, 30 years, that's nothing. You know, you have to do 100 years in our culture before you've done good damage, you know? Like you know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, like to see Frances now, I said, Sissy, just make sure there's a spirit and there's a legacy there. You don't, and she's got her way of telling stories, but there's that real spine sense of creative protocols. There's just those tools are there for us, and you can go back and reflect, because you might find different measures of inspiration, but they'll all help you. Yeah. The legacy of those stories.
Well, and that notion, I get a sense, as you're saying there, that this is an intergenerational project. Yeah. It's going to, you do your 30 years, the next person does as long as they do, and then build and build and build.
Yeah, and I think it's got the good thing with Bangarra though, like people say to me, what do you mean when it's got its, like, there's a real good, strong spirit in it. And I know we take that for granted. I know when we walk on country and people go, like, it's too easy to say you're connecting to something, but when you truly do connect and you feel it. And I learned that when I went back home, and David was great. David used to always, he'd go home for me because he realised I was busy running the company, and I'd go, I can't go there, and he'd go, yeah. And then he used to stir me up when we'd go home on country, because he'd say to my cousins and all my other mum, "You remember Stephen?" and I'd go, "Get fucked, Dad, leave me alone." "Now you remember Stephen? We used to call him the milkman's son," and they'd stir me up. And you know, like I go home now, and I'm really respectful, knowing the great work that's been done in the community, and I'm a happy fella to take a ticket and wait in line, you know, because yet as much as but what I want to do though, I'm going to help there's some beautiful elders group. I just, you know, I can never be rich because my family are all on my payroll, and I don't get much money anyway. And I said, oh shit, you couldn't be a millionaire in my family. But the beautiful thing is, I was buying land and bought a bit of land up home, and then I gave it back to the black housing, so that we built these beautiful affordable living for elders. Yeah. And I love all that. Like, I just love. I don't want a lot, you know. As long as I got that connection and that, and I'm a grandfather now with, and you know, she's adorable. Little Mila Miramu, she's going to be hard work actually. And Hunter, I've got a really decent young son that's just, you know, he's got 2 kids under 3 and he's only 28. But I said, there now, you want to get married early and you got them kids coming. But yeah, and that's great. Like, he's been waiting for me to leave Bangarra. He took my money and got an ABN and started a production company straight away. And he said,
straight away for you?
Yeah, and he rang me up, and I was wondering, I was on the phone with him constantly for a week, because he writes, see. And then he said, "No, have a look at some of the stuff I've written." I come out, and it's everything that I said. I said, "Lord, you're getting free creative consultancy from but what's beautiful, he's just such passion for storytelling, and yeah, I'll go and work with him, I think.
Well, you've worked, I know you worked with your nephews, you've worked with your brothers, you've worked with your sister, you've worked with your son. Are you going to work with your granddaughter?
Oh, Mila, yeah, her and I have a great connection. She's very funny. Well, Hunter says, oh, it's funny, like, he just leaves us alone in the room and we'll go for a walk and talk and all. She's just, I don't know, I have a good connection with her. Yeah, I reckon I didn't want her to be in the arts, but I reckon she's got the good little resilience, little heart there to tell stories, yeah.
Well, can I say that there's a list of people who all want projects from you. They want you to make a film, they want you to make a television series, they want you to direct their shows for them, they want you to do the opening ceremony of the Brisbane Olympic Games. There's all these
Wesley, I'll be 60,000 years old by then. That's 10 years away.
Yeah, 10 years. Well, you know...
You can't talk, you'll be up there too, though.
You can shut up now. Okay. We're talking about you. But
well, why don't we go back? They can put us on a 9-year contract and we'll do the deadliest ceremony ever.
All right, I'll ring my sister.
Okay.
The joke is my sister's the arts minister of Queensland. So, but this idea that everyone wants something from you. You've spent all this time as a leader of Bangarra. You've been an incredible builder of a family. Now when you're leaving, people just want you.
I don't know, that's true.
I'm going to ring them now.
No, I think if you go out of mind, out of sight and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm not on social media and stuff, and, you know, and then you've got to lead the company because you've got to be out there. But I don't know about that.
I'm going to... those people who want to work with Stephen Page in the future, hands up.
No.
Yes.
This is my next job. I started my own sock company.
Oh, did you?
I'm bullshitting. Sorry. But I don't know. Why are you asking me this for?
Well, because there is... I mean, when you have your break,
yeah,
you're too valuable a person. You're all the things that you know about the arts, about storytelling.
Yeah, but I'd like to work on myself. I want to go, yeah, because I carried all them years, and I'm a bit fearful of it, but I'm sort of open to be vulnerable with it. It's just to stop and just reset, and you know, I need some cleansing, and I just want to go home and yeah. I think when you stop being that sort of leader in that Western machine system, yeah, and the part of me is going to be excited about it, but the other part, I think I'm going to be finding some truths about just who I am and what I want, and yeah, it's good. I'm just willing just to surrender to that, and just making decisions and board papers and talking all the time. I don't want to talk anymore.
What about going on dates?
No dates, no. No, I don't know about that.
You can anytime you want.
I don't think anyone would be able to put up with it. That's the problem. That's too hard work, that. Yeah.
So, advice you might give to the next generation. You've already talked about Franny and what she's going to be doing in Bangarra and that kind of through London. You're not finished yet. You've still got a lot more work to do.
My contract's not done till May next year, and I've got a few things to do.
But this is the last big major work that you're making with Bangarra.
Yeah. Well,
it just happened to be like that. It wasn't planned.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, because you're so in the moment. Like, we do one new work a year, so therefore, September of that year, you've got to have the next work ready to go, because that's just the machine. You know, they want a little teaser brochure of the image, and then they want this, and there's a campaign for that, and this. Everything's a brand, you know, and there's that real organic brand, and that's what we built on for 30 years. And then it's how that sits in the synthetic digital world, you know, and then what does that mean? And so the brand's always going to be going through these layers of what is the identity of this company. So, you know, I'm happy to, you know, I said to Fran, whatever, curate stuff, produce stuff back at Bangarra. I think just stepping down as Artistic Director.
Yeah.
And they've got a cleaner's job coming up soon, so I'm like...
Cleaner's job, Bangarra cleaner. Excellent, love that. We're going to have questions in about 5 minutes, folks, so if you have any questions that are burning, we do have a microphone on either side. And I will get very particular about questions, because often people like to get on the microphone and tell you your life story, because we just heard an incredible life story, but it's about questions of Stephen that I really want to focus you on.
It doesn't have to be.
It will fucking do. No, we'll be here for 15 minutes as someone tells their life story.
Well, you're obviously forever. You tell them that.
Well, you're on this stage, but the idea of a question for Stephen would be really valuable to kind of... shut up.
Okay.
But just before we open to questions, the idea of the advice to... If someone's in the audience now and you have a couple of pieces of advice that you want to pass on to them, that you go, think about this, remember about this. What are those pieces of advice?
In terms of what?
Oh, it could be art, could be life, could be keeping the culture going.
Well, I only know from my creative process, and so therefore there's beautiful little philosophical principles in that, you know, are a companion for the way you live and the way you respond out there, I suppose. I don't know if that makes sense. But, you know, like I go home and I realise, you know, the resources I've had compared to mob in my community and the opportunities that I've had. And, you know, I go back and I make sure I share those experiences because they won't know what those experiences are. You know, I remember when I did the Commonwealth Games for you in 2018 and, you know, just watching 80 of my elder mobs from all the elders, they were over 60. And I went around to gathered them all to tell them stories and wanted to know whether they would, they wanted to reconnect to a story and be part of a ceremony that was on the scale of the Commonwealth Games stage. And, you know, they all looked at me. And then, and what was beautiful was just tapping into that vulnerability of all the mobs sitting there. And they know what I do in the mainstream. And then I was telling them, because I haven't told them stories, my mob, my experience. I told reporters and this and that. But just to sit down with them and tell them my stories, and I thought how valuable that what I was experiencing and having the resource that therefore as a responsibility, taking that knowledge back. And not just for the next generation. I wanted to take it back to elders first, you know, because that's just the way I work. And then working with them and then reconnecting to the right ochre colours, and then if we were having a totemic significant because of the way this contemporary presentations is, you know, they all agreed on the wedge-tailed eagle, and that's sort of significant to us. And then, you know, I shared the whole process with them, and then, you know, they didn't want to dance too much, but we took some motifs and we all discovered, and they were rekindling, and they'd say, oh, I remember Granny used to do that one, and then they'd all share, and and it was, just watching that shift and shape and the making of that. And then I remember when I designed deadly outfits for the women, and then they got, my great nephew was, cousin nephew he was a bird wrangler at Currumbin Bird Sanctuary, and he heard I was doing this, and they had wedge-tailed eagles there, and he would go and collect all the fallen wedge-tailed eagles for me, and he come over one night before we did dress rehearsal, and he said, hey cousin, look what I got. And he had a big blue bag, all these wedge-tailed eagle feathers. So we took all them, we did a lot of roping and weaving, and so we made all these beautiful waist belts, and it's just, I don't know, just the spirit was just pushing everyone together. And then that opening night, that dress rehearsal where they all painted up and dressed up for ceremony, and here's all these over 60 elders, and they forbidden from ceremony, couldn't do ceremony, and then connecting back to it, they'd done the odd welcome to country and the little token 5-minute thing here and do that and respect that, but really invest on the scale, and for them was just amazing. And then they just all cried, you know, because when they all painted up and stuff, they were the true spirit of themselves, you know. And one of them was crying and said, I don't even look like me. And I said, that's because you're carrying your ancestors, you're connecting. You know, and so it's interesting, like, anyway, sharing that is great, and I'll probably be doing more of that.
We've got about 10, 15 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to have a question, just make sure you continue to stay a little bit away from each other in terms of social distancing. But we've got a microphone on either side. Please ask questions. Come on up and ask a question. I don't know whether you're leaving or you're coming for a question. But
She's saying, I'm over this fella talking.
not even. Or if you're right in the middle of it, just yell it out and I'll repeat it. Any questions? No? Oh, up the back there, then Julie. Yes.
Stephen, thank you for everything that you've done for Bangarra. But more importantly, in your new bracket next life, could you become an advisor to the federal government?
I'll leave that to him and his sister. No, I just find my knowledge and wisdom and sharing of that is really connected to a certain form of knowledge, you know. I don't want to be playing in that area. And I know there's a lot of mob that I respect who put their hand up to work in that social climate, you know, and really it's a respect for them and supporting them. Talking about my mob, talking about our people that have challenges to go up to war against that political system. And that's why you do what you do. See, that's why you build the other road and you work in the arts, and you're in much more control, and you're not getting disrupted by being in the belly of the poison, because that just wrings your spirit out. I don't want to go in there and all my spirit get drained out, and then I'm just like, oh, they got me too. You know, that's what I'm saying. Like, oil and water will never be as one substance. I think we're all romanticizing. So there's got to be a big shift coming soon in 100 years.
We might get the house lights up a little bit more so we can see people. I know Julie had a question on the front there.
Thanks so much for your generosity in sharing with us.
Thanks, Julie.
I'm just wondering about Bangarra as is it more for us experience last night? Is it anything in theatre and
The question is just, is Bangarra becoming more of a theatre, dance, music, all of the art forms coming together company?
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's been all those things over the years, just different shows. A certain art form will become a more predominant one. And I think in this one, what I didn't want to lose, someone said to me, oh, it's like dance with songs. And I said, yeah, like dance with live songs. But we did a work, Skin, in 2000. I did a work called Spear. It was 40 minutes. So Uncle Archie Roach was in it. Wayne Blair's one of his first jobs. I think he flew down to Sydney. I think we read a Kevin Gilbert poem at that time. Anyway, it had live spoken word, traditional singing, contemporary. It had all these different forms. So, and when I was doing this work, I was going back and looking at that work. And earlier works we had, David always loved to have even if it was the old day, he used to go out and warm the audience up with his guitar and sing a few songs. And then he'd be like really cynical way. He'd always have a go at me. And now the dance. And, oh, wait a minute. Then we used to do, now the dance, contemporary dance. And then next, the traditional. And then next one, we cross over a bit more. And then we weave this or weave that. And then it just started, like your language in your own backyard, when you're sharing that knowledge together and creating together and we're all channeled into it, it's just a beautiful natural process of you establishing a language. And I know dance has been a prominent one, but you know, all in the pre-recorded music. We've always worked with Songman and in the pre-record. But as I said before, like musicals they're a funny thing, musical. I think it's because we've just been so hit with such I'm not calling it the poison, but the synthetic irony of it because of Disney and everything else, you know. So it was a great challenge to work in it. And, you know, as I said before, like not most songs I had to fight against and I sort of just let go. But even Elaine, like doing Marin's Rebellion, where she, where we talk about rape of the land, and that is a metaphor of rape of the human. And, we were being very honest with all that. And I remember she used to do, when she said, rage like a sea on another, we had all this accompanying music, and in rehearsal I just stripped it all out. And I said, why don't you do the first verse and you tell me? you do spoken word, you tell me a story. Because I wanted her to feel safe, because she was the chosen one to share that as an experience that's happened in the past and that it's carried in this present day, is going back to the trauma conversations we're having. So, oh, Julie, I don't even know where I'm going with this conversation. But anyway, yes, we are dance theatre.
Well,
So,
but it is the sense that when you talk about skin, when that particular work where all those things came together, it's really about the collaborators that come together as well.
yeah.
Like how they work. There's Stephen who's on the streaming watching this right now. Is there a Bangarra work that you think most captures your vision, that you're most proud of, and why?
Oh, God.
You love all your children equally.
Yeah, I do. Like, they're all now part of one big mother totemic system, you know? Like, they're all, as I said, they all support each other. So I think, not as a literal story, but I just think, I just love the world that they all sit in, the creation mythology sort of pantry they all sit in. I think I'm most proud of the skin of that they sit in. Yeah.
I just know, I remember seeing ochres and going, wow, that was a huge leap from praying mantis dreaming or Nini and that work. And then you go, and then skin for me was another huge leap forward. I mean,
but also all those works, like we did a lot of Yungal Mata language and Jakapura, and he influenced that first sort of 9 years, coming through 10 years, and then, you know, good old Nora Ward and all Amity and all the Pichinjara women wanted to work with Bangarra, and they said, hey, boy, can you take the story to the Opera House and we can get our voice on it? And so we try to work out the best way for that. So there was always, just the different relationships and inspire the stories. They all just have such their own sort of personal spirit that I love. And so therefore, you're right. Go back to your first thing. I love all my children.
well, let's put it this way. Do you have to fall out of love with a show to do the next one? Do you have to leave it behind and go, now I'm going to do the next
because I always find it an inspiration. It mightn't be a huge part of the next work, but you just always reflect that creative process, I suppose. Yeah.
Up the back. Oh, yes, thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Beautiful work last night, and I really love connect with the direction that you did things and the way you told the stories last night. Reflecting on Nunuk's walk this morning and the stories that we heard there, and waiting in Nunuk's story about Hobart for when the betrayal of the white fellas, the black fellas, when the betrayal point would stop, when that would turn around, and then you say black fella got to carry the trauma, white fella can carry the guilt. I'm really curious about when you have seen work by white fellas that as a white fella that makes work, you know, when you see work that wants desperately to be socio-culturally connected and reflective, we've seen some really examples of white fella guilt carrying work or art that really you connected with, or you felt progressed the conversation.
I think everyone can hear that question.
Could you?
Are there works that you've seen made by white fellas that you think have progressed the whole concept of...
Definitely. We always... I say I'm not on social media or anything like that, or from before. We work in a world where there's quite a universal of conversations that take place, and I'm always just more curious that... I respect that there's got to be that perspective, but I try not to get caught up in it because it's such a dominant, supremacist opinion. And I'm only saying that because it is. It's a very, the Western system, the Western supremacy, it's always sung its song and had its leadership of opinion. So therefore, I respect it, but I'm more going to channel and funnel my energy It takes a lot. I was sick of cleaning the white man laundry. I ran out of Omo, you know, like, because you had to clean it first before you could have your voice. And we came from generations where that had to happen. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I don't spend a lot of time in it. I just really am more focused on reconnecting and finding that pathway that's going to be, setting down those foundations from our black perspective. And, you can only live in a time and just focus on that, and that's what I focus on. Yes, we have Western supremacy, we have Western popular culture, all of that's there, and all that perspective is there, and I'm aware of. But I tell you what I've loved in the last decade is just feeling like I could own a black process of connecting back to our stories, mob stories, and it's been a real, and there's a fragility around that. So you just a different way of caring and being inspired by.
I like to tell the story of the pig and the chicken go to breakfast, and the pig says to the chicken, "You order breakfast," and the chicken says, "Let's do bacon and eggs." And the pig has to say, "Okay, just remember, we have a different relationship to this meal. For you, it's a contribution, and for me, it's a sacrifice." And that at the deep heart of all of these kind of things is that there are different relationships to the material. And I love that earlier you said too that the relationship you've had with Steve Francis and Alana Valentine has been where they know what they're in service of.
Yeah.
And there are allies along the way as well.
Oh yeah, and they're respected. I don't strip them down and hose them down the corner and say, "Okay, I'm the boss now." But I can't. No. There's. You gotta have. That's just the human spirit, though. That's universal. You can't take that away.
I think for me too, there's a sense of white people have to tell their story and the whole truth of that story too, from their perspective.
And that's the decades we're in now. That's why in the new platform for that is your social digital universe. That's why stories are now. Everyone has a story. Everyone has an opinion, and that story becomes personal. And that there's a truth that we're really in a truth century, aren't we? Like it's but I don't think the Western supremacist culture could have that therapy if it wasn't for what the minority of cultures, what that resilient spirit and them having a voice. That's what's inspired the white fella, is that. And that's why America ate its own head around Trump's time. All that powership and leadership, that's all going to change. And you're seeing little baby examples of that, and that's because it's the general social universe community that are having their voice, and that's why that, in a way, that social digital world is an interesting challenge, because it's exposing these seeds for the future. That makes sense.
Well, this has been interesting, going back to like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, which is going back a couple of decades now, where they had 4 definitions of truth. They believed that there was an individual truth, the truth you believe to be true, a forensic truth that you could prove through science, an official truth that was recorded by governments and media and all that stuff, and then a 4th truth, or a community truth, which was about a healing to go forward.
There's our next work, truth.
Truth. It sounds like it's the one that needs to happen. And we almost heard Stephen Page sing before. So even though he's been poo-pooing musicals this whole time, I reckon it's a musical that we're about to hear.
Or the Brisbane opening ceremony could be.
There we go.
All themed on truth.
Oh, okay. I think you've heard it here. I think, well, if anything, truth-telling, we talk about a voice to Parliament. We talk about the need for truth-telling. We talk about this idea that we will not grow up to be a full functioning country unless we embrace our whole history, 65, 100,000-year-old history, that's what's needed. And what's holding us back is willful ignorance and a commitment to being young and lucky. And until we're able to move past that, and I think what you've done at Bangarra, you say, yes, you're 30 years old, but it's 65,000 years old, the practice you've been doing.
Yeah, whatever it is, 32 years or 65,000.
There we go.
Because it might be just say, you're only scratching the surface, like of having that initiation. And that's what I've loved a lot, seeing elders now that have had a pathway where they have worked in politics for many years, and like you're saying about this sort of, if you're a young political activist, like, I laugh sometimes at this generation because it's quite sweet actually. This sort of, I call it the synthetic black activism, where it's just mob jumping on, their way of jumping on social media, and then you can see what's synthetic. You can see who's listened and who's carried knowledge, and it's a really, really interesting diversity amongst our own mob. And I'm not being cynical. It's just I've watched that, and I've seen the 17-year-old really aggressive activists. As age goes on, when you're in the elder, you're so exhausted by it all because you've had the contemporary initiation of it, and so therefore that it's a truth of carrying that knowledge, and that's why it's that contemporary knowledge for generations to come is really important for us to be aware of, and that's just looking at one race having that through line, but I think that's happening universely.
We have run out of time. Stephen,
put my shoes back on.
Put your shoes back on. This is not a eulogy. This is not the end. This is but a shift in time. But just a big thank you from everyone here for your words of wisdom today, for the show, Wujung, as well, which was an extraordinary piece of work. Please, can you join me in thanking Stephen Page?
Thank you. And thank my cousin Wesley.
Don't claim me up. No.
You know they planned this.
For those who are staying just at 3 o'clock, there's the Firestarter Film is being shown in the studio. If you've got the tickets, or I'm sure if there's some spare tickets, you can jump in and get that as well to watch a little bit of the 32-year history of Bangarra in film form there, and hear some more of these stories and do all that.
The festival.
Sorry?
The festival, the pronunciation of that. That's happening here.
Oh, the festival. How do we pronounce the festival fully? I looked at Simon there. Yeah, which is, can I just say, great stuff that there's, yes, bringing Bangarra, but actually all of these other works that have been around, and such respect shown to local people too. So.
Oh yeah, but that's just resources, just taking the responsibility, and that's the only way we're going to change this shift. And that's what I talk about, that reciprocation of companionship. It just takes a little move like that, where you let the trust, I hate the word trust, but just let mob lead and do it their way. But if you've got the resource, you have the opportunity, and I think, and that.
We have Simon wanting to think for that.
No,
What's that?
Simon Welling was thinking.
Yeah. Oh no, that's what I mean. Sorry, I'm directing it to you, Simon, but I didn't want to say your name till the very end. But that's but no, having that opportunity. And I don't think that's happening in Hobart. I don't think it's happened. The times I've been coming over here, the 30 years, I don't. And also too, I think we get. The thing is now that just gives more empowerment, because then we can run with it now, and it can be annually, or it can be 4 times a year, or Blackfella season 8 times a year, or whatever that means. Yeah.
All right. We better stop there, because we'll keep talking forever. Thank you so much for coming. Stay safe.
Cheers.
We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so deadly.